Welcome back here today on the beautiful campus of Florida Panhandle Technical College. I've said several times that spring has sprung. I think this time it truly has. As far as the calendar is concerned, it certainly is spring, but we wonder if we're going to have any spring at all this year, maybe go right into summer. All that said, certainly nothing to complain about right here in what we call the real Florida. Some of the best weather in the world as far as I'm concerned. If it was any better, we'd probably have too many people here. But we definitely get all four of those seasons. Our guest today is Sunshine Speers from Emerald Coast Hospice. We have joined with Emerald Coast in this monthly message to you, talking about all of the issues which face us from a health perspective and also from a societal aspect. Today we're going to be talking about distracted driving. In the pre-show I was speaking a little bit to Sunshine, saying, you know, I bet a lot of the people watching the show today are going to say, well, that's not me. I don't drive distractedly. But if you are paying attention to your cell phone instead of the road, if you're texting, certainly that's one of the worst. If you're reading a book, you know, one time I passed a guy who was actually shaving with an electric razor going down the road, and I've seen lots of women putting on makeup. All of those great examples of distracted driving. When we come back, we're going to talk to Sunshine a little bit about their month of April focus on distracted driving. They've got a great initiative. They are pledging individually as members of Emerald Coast Hospice to adhere to the rules of the road. We're going to talk about that and a lot more when we come back with Sunshine Speers from Emerald Coast Hospice, and we will be right back. Welcome back. As mentioned, our guest today is Sunshine Speers from Emerald Coast Hospice. These months are flying by. It seems like every time I turn around, I'm looking at the calendar and Sunshine's here at noon today. Thanks so much for taking advantage of this monthly opportunity. Are you getting any feedback from Emerald Coast Hospice, from some of your staffers? They giving you a hard time about being a star?
Well, you know, they tease me here and there. So far, it's been a very positive experience, though. I
would imagine that the overall awareness for Emerald Coast Hospice, first and foremost, but individually, each one of these events or what causes about which we speak every month certainly brings a level of an awareness that probably would be a little bit harder to achieve if you were just passing out flyers or using whatever methods you used to use. This month, talking about distracted driving. Certainly one of my pet peeves. I think that cell phones and all of that which goes along with cell phones really bugs me. People, and I've mentioned this many times in the past, people will call a meeting with me in my office and then proceed to take 6 phone calls while we're sitting there. Very rude, to say the least. Again, one of my pet peeves. My wife says, no, I'm just old-fashioned, and maybe that's the case. But what we're talking today about is driving distractedly. All of us have been going down the road and we see that guy or that girl who's driving and they'll hit the inside line and they'll hit the outside line, and you know that they're carrying on a conversation with somebody. They're looking up directions on their cell phone. Maybe they're reading their emails. Whatever it is they're doing, you know, we have a state law now, do we not, that if you're going to make a phone call that you must get over to the side of the road?
I don't know that Florida does. I know Alabama does.
So Florida has not yet instituted that.
I'm not certain that they have, but
I know other states do.
I wouldn't be surprised if it wasn't far off. So.
Having a rule or law and enforcing it are two different things. And at the end of the day, it's not about the enforcement of it, it's about the awareness, and that's exactly why you're here. When we say distracted driving, I mentioned a few examples. What exactly are you guys talking about when you say distracted driving?
Well, you know, visual, manual, meaning we're touching and fixing things or reaching for something, or mental, you know, having our mind somewhere else, thinking about all the things that we need to get done. We live in a very, very busy world, and it is very easy for us to be thinking about what we need to do once we get somewhere, being in a hurry, dealing with traffic. And it's, you know, it's common and it's easy to do. It's just we have to take an extra step to be aware, plan ahead, and know that all of those things can put us at risk if we do that while we're driving.
I am so glad that you explained it just that way. I focus, because it's a pet peeve, on cell phones, but what a great example. Number one, you said physically distracted, changing the CD in the player, looking for the station, looking for that song that you want to hear on the radio. But absolutely, we get out of a bad meeting with a client, we get out of school and we did bad on a test, we just had a confrontation with a coworker, we jump in our car, and all of a sudden, we're driving a 3,000-pound missile controlled by our emotion at that point.
Yes.
What a great way to explain it. How are you guys received when you do these kinds of campaigns? Do you find that people deny being that person until you go through these steps and explain exactly what is distracted driving?
Well, absolutely. It's very common for us to say, oh, I don't do that. It's always easy to say that someone else would, we notice someone else doing it, but we don't notice ourselves doing it. We always say that, oh, I wouldn't be the one that would cause an accident, or I wouldn't be the one to be in an accident. But the facts are that 40,000 people, an estimated number of 40,000 people, died in car accidents in 2016, which was a 6% increase from 15 and a 14% increase from 14, which is about, in 53 years, the most dramatic increase there has ever been. And that in itself speaks volumes. Now, that's not to say that all 40,000 of those people were involved in distracted driving, but we have to look at the facts that we as a society are more distracted, and we need to take an extra precaution. And I can't help but believe that those numbers are a direct reflection of what we do when we get behind the wheel.
Yeah, and I think by default, every one of those would be some form of a distracted driving. I mean, you may be the victim, and maybe somebody crosses over the line and hits you head on and you die, but still somebody caused that accident. And if you are paying attention and you get your hands at 10 and 2, like they teach you in driving school, and you are focused and you're not distracted by what's going on in your life and you're not on your cell phone, chances are you're going to make it to your destination. What's really scary to me, truly, out of all proportion to anything else, is the young drivers just getting their license at 16, 17 years of age. I was much smarter than I am now. I knew it all. Just as my parents get older every day, and they're both 80, and they get smarter every day as far as I'm concerned. Those people getting into that car, there's an amazing statistic about the number of those people, those children, because at that point they are not truly young adults yet, getting into accidents, sometimes just single car because they go off the road. There's 5 or 6 of girls in the car or guys, and they're dancing and singing, and the next thing you know. So I would imagine, now do you have any statistics when it comes to the age groups, the way that's broken down?
Not specifically with me. I mean, those are available, of course, but I didn't break it down to that. But I do know that we set examples for our children. I have a 15-year-old, and she's learning to drive. And I am as guilty as the next person of doing things behind the wheel that I probably shouldn't have. I'm fortunate that she's very aware, and she will call me out on it, and that's good. I mean, we need that, but we also need to understand that we are setting an example for our children. And, because we are a little more experienced, the likelihood of us doing something is not as high. It's still there. But for teenagers who are learning to drive and aren't as familiar with, their reflexes aren't as quick, it puts them at an extremely high risk.
Yeah, and it's probably no mystery that those years that have experienced such a jump in the occurrence of these accidents coincides with the accessibility and affordability of smart devices. Never before have there been so many features available on phones, and phones continue to get less expensive. Service plans get less expensive. So
everybody has one.
Everybody has one, and more importantly, if you have an unlimited plan, so you're not paying for data, I think I've had some people say, well, if I'm not using my phone, I'm sort of wasting that availability. And that's why you see 2 or 3 teenagers sitting abreast on a bench and they're all texting each other. What's the answer to the problem? Obviously, there's an awareness component. Let's go to that first. What all are you guys doing for that awareness?
Well, we are all about community at Emerald Coast Hospice. So we feel like not only raising awareness about the different things that we need to be focused on, but making a pledge as employees for Emerald Coast Hospice that we are going to essentially take back our drive. We're going to be focused drivers. We're going to try to reduce the amount of distraction that we have while we're going to our destination. That's hard to do. We're going into patients' homes, we're taking care of patients, we're receiving calls from doctors, getting orders, trying to do those things that we need to do to get our job done. So nurses that work in the homes are at higher risk, or any healthcare professionals that work in a home are at high risk. So we're just taking an extra step. We're actually asking employees to sign a pledge saying that they're going to be more aware for their community and for themselves and their loved ones. So.
Aside from FedEx or UPS drivers or maybe mailmen, I hadn't thought of it this way before, but you guys, you're visiting nurses, your staff that's out there you're almost getting paid to be drivers because you're spending an awful lot of time on the road. You could maybe argue that you're spending almost as much time on the road as you are in patients' homes if you have people that are in the rural areas that are doing a lot of driving. Interesting. Do you guys have any stats internally about the number of miles that you drive or anything like that? Now, first of all, do you use your own vehicles?
We do, yes. Interestingly enough, prior to transitioning into this position, I was a case manager in the home. I would average anywhere from 100 to 150 miles a day, only patient visits. That didn't count my to and from the office. It varies, of course, but I had actually just done some tallying from my last year's mileage, and that's about what it averaged out to be.
So if you're traveling 500 to 700, 800 miles a week, and let's just take the low end of that, let's say 500 miles a week at 100 miles a day, 5-day week, and then you need to figure for 50 weeks out of the year, you've got 25,000 miles, which is a little bit more than what most people drive their vehicle in its entirety, and that's just from 9 to 5 when you're working, or 7 to 3, or whatever your hours happen to be. Do they find that people who drive their vehicles as much as you guys do have a higher rate of accidents or a lower rate because you're more aware, or are there any...
As far as being with the company that I'm with specifically and working out of the Marion and Chipley offices that I'm aware of, we've not had any accidents that have occurred due to anything of that nature. So I do believe that our staff do take an extra initiative. But as far as nationally or even, beyond our two offices, I really wouldn't be able to speak for what the statistics are. I do know that as far as our comfort level, when you're behind the wheel, for instance, my daughter, who's a relatively new driver, she's very nervous, but she's also very cautious. And so with that level of comfort, our caution level seems to decrease. And as we get older, we do have a tendency to become a lot more comfortable behind the wheel. That's why they say, we're more likely to have an accident when we're closer to our home, because that's the road that we stop paying as much attention because we're so comfortable with it. So there's something to be said for getting older and having more confidence, because of that, we can sometimes be a little too comfortable and not pay as much attention. So,
is there a component in this campaign that may focus on the passenger or passengers, and maybe engaging them to be more aware? So if there needs to be a station change on the radio, that passenger does it, and is some of this focused on the passenger component?
Absolutely. It's asking that those that are passengers in the car help keep the driver on task. Try not to do things to distract them. Obviously, if you have young children, that's hard to do. But we as parents have to sometimes tune out certain things because we know that the road is a priority if we want to get from A to B safely. But as we, as if we're older passengers, even my teenager, for example, holding each other accountable and making sure that we're saying to the driver, hey, let me do that for you. And I know my child will sometimes go, hey, give me your phone and I'll message her back if she hears my phone go off or something. And so I'll hand the phone to her and she'll do it for me. When it comes to, a group of peers in a vehicle, the same thing applies. It's our responsibility, not only as the driver to be safe, but as passengers to make sure, of course, that we're, wearing our seatbelt, but keeping the driver as less distracted as possible. So,
times have changed. It hasn't been that long. When I got my first vehicle, it didn't have seatbelts in it. They were not required.
Yeah.
When my parents were raising us, and there were 5 of us children, when my parents were driving their car, not only did we not have seatbelts, but you may have one of the young kids standing up on the front seat next to mom who's driving. You may have somebody even in a sedan laying up on that back shelf by the back window. And when we had a station wagon, you'd all be playing in the back of the station wagon. So definitely a lot of changes, but the cars were also built like tanks.
Yeah.
Nowadays, you have so much plastic and lightweight to be able to get better mileage. So things have changed. Also, back in those days, you had to find a payphone, and it cost you 10 cents. Back when I was young, you had to carry that dime around with you all the time. So we've got less reliable vehicles. They're cheaper to run or because of national mandate. But if you are in a wreck, more damage occurs. So we've got seat belts and we've got more distractions. So a whole lot more that goes into that equation.
And we have faster speed limits and people trying to get places in much bigger hurries.
Are you old enough to remember back when we had the gas shortage, when they put the speed limit down to 55 everywhere? Not quite?
Yeah.
When that happened, they took all of the interstates and put them all down to 55. And you should have heard the outcry. Truckers and everybody that used to do an 80 or more, 55. Well, it didn't take very many years and it all went back up. But so your effort then is in conjunction with the federal?
The national, it's National Distracted Driver Awareness Month.
Okay. So the federal government has got this initiative going on throughout the country.
It's national. Now, I'm not certain of who began the initiative.
Okay.
But I do know that, for us, I search for anything and everything I can to be involved in community and community awareness and community safety. So when it comes to looking at these type of things, I felt like this applied very much to what we do every day as healthcare providers in the home, but also to our communities. So.
We live in a large rural area. It's not unusual for people in Chipley, Bonifay, Marietta to be very, very used to driving an hour to do no matter what they want to do. If you want to drive to Dothan or Panama City for some of the bigger shopping or restaurants, it's an hour. Nobody thinks anything of it. Going from Bonifay to Marietta is an hour. Going from Chipley to Marietta, only a half hour or more, but still, we are very used to driving long distances and spending a lot of time in the vehicles. That in itself sort of gets us more relaxed and more comfortable and less responsive to what's going on around us. They say that, especially on the interstates, you're there with your hand up on the wheel, and the roads are going by, and the lines are going chicka, 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 and it's so easy to get that hypnotism going on. But now what we're talking about here is your everyday driving, for instance, such as your providers do every single day to get to their customers or their clients' homes. What is, now talk a little bit more about that pledge. I like that's interesting. If other businesses want to be able to do that maybe internally, and frankly, I'm going to go to the county and see if they'll embrace this after we get done talking. Talk a little bit more about that.
Okay. Well, what we're essentially asking our employees do is to pledge to themselves, their community, and their loved ones that they're going to be more aware. Different things you can do. Put the address in your GPS system before you ever start your car. Now, there are a lot of vehicles now, mine specifically, you cannot put a GPS in, or you can't put the address in while your car is in motion. But you can on your cell phone, but you can on the vehicle itself.
Safety
if you're in a situation where you're upset, or you just came from a meeting and you're in a hurry, or take a few minutes, take a few deep breaths, kind of diffuse the situation. Think about, start thinking about your community, start thinking about your loved ones and how it would affect them if you were in an accident. I mean, if you just want to get down to the hard facts, a lot of people who are in accidents aren't necessarily injured, but we damage our vehicles, and sometimes we're without a vehicle. Well, as healthcare providers in the home, if we're without a vehicle, we can't work. So, even if you want to get down to it from that perspective, just simply tearing up our vehicle would cause a lot of issues for us. So we've asked that everyone who is willing to sign our pledge, we'll be giving out pins that our staff will be wearing throughout the month of April, saying that they pledge to be aware of distracted driving, and we're going to do an article toward the end of the month of our pledge that we've signed, and we're probably going to put it in a plaque and have it put up in each of our offices, and we'll do an article in the paper with everyone's picture in it showing that they participated in this initiative, and it's a big deal for our staff because it also gives them some autonomy, and it makes them feel like they're doing something to help the community versus, sometimes I may be involved in an event for the community that they don't get to participate in. This is a way for everyone to get involved. So.
Yeah, much like a construction site that has a sign that says we've gone this many days without an accident, many businesses, many companies, certainly county and state offices like DOT, I know that they sometimes do it as well. They've got a big sign there that says it's been 340 days since we've had an accident. I would think that any county entity, any state entity, any municipal entity, right here in Chipley, for instance, would want to be cognizant of this and to embrace that. Are you willing to go around to these businesses and speak to them about that?
Sure.
Should they have other questions?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
If you own or are the CEO or president or run a big business, a corporation, maybe one of the governmental offices, the county is a good example. Lots of employees driving lots of vehicles, many times their own, most times a county-owned vehicle. Great opportunity for you to get on board with this initiative. What's the official title for the month?
National Distracted Driver Awareness Month. National
Distracted Driver Awareness Month. It's not something we want you to watch or look at while you're driving, but certainly you can watch this video for a little more information. Is there anything that we left out, or if they need more information, what is your website?
Well, you could actually call Emerald Coast Hospice. We have a Mariana office, which is 526-3577, or the Chipley office, which is 638-8787. And you can ask for myself, Sunshine Speers. And also understand that, Emerald Coast Hospice offers a lot of other services to the community. And as a part of what we do every day, we feel like these types of events are as important as taking care of our patients and making sure they have a really high quality of life.
Well said. So often we do talk about just that, the services that you provide. I would dare say that this type of an awareness campaign is every bit as important as any of the other stuff you do. Thanks for all you do, and thanks for joining us again this month. Look forward to seeing you in another month, and who knows what that holds for us. It's always a surprise to me, but it's a joy to have you on the show. Couldn't be any more close to my heart. As I said, it's a pet peeve of mine, distracted driving, certainly when it pertains to cell phones. But thanks for being here today.
Thank you.
Our guest today has been Sunshine Speers with Emerald Coast Hospice, talking about National Distracted Drivers Month. If you're guilty of this, I know I am every once in a while, more often than I'd care to admit. I say that it's a pet peeve, but when my phone rings, I usually answer it. I have to say I don't text, but on occasion I have read a text when it's come across. All of that distracted driving. We used to have the DD, the designated driver, when a group of people were going out to a restaurant and might have an alcoholic beverage or two. And in this case, probably picking somebody who can stay away from their phone for a few minutes, or at least long enough to make that drive, would not be a bad idea. We'll be right back.